Now, I want you to keep thinking in the back of your head, the feeding of the 5,000. I'm not sure my voice is going to be able to make it, so we're going to just skip over that one today just a bit. But think about what's happening in the feeding of the 5,000, right? If you had to tell somebody, which I maybe am going to do next week, warning, have you get into groups and just kind of retell the story real quick to each other, right? Just collectively, one group. But we have been trying to see that story from through different lenses, through different people's eyes, right? The people that were there, the disciples, as much as we can try through the eyes of Jesus, although again, none of us can really do that. But at the same time, we can see what the human interaction is there and how Jesus uses those people. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit in just a minute. But I want to really focus today on the scripture that I just read about this idea of here's what she did. Did she do it for forgiveness? Did she do it just because she was trying to buddy up to the teacher? Well, you could maybe think that. I suppose you can see why Simon thought that. But then you would kind of think, wouldn't you? Well, but Jesus knows what's in our hearts, right? So you really can't buddy up. Did everybody have a teacher like that you just couldn't put something by him, right? You could maybe try, or maybe it's somebody in your family that you put on this little smile and you're like, oh, well, and you try to sweet talk them, and you're not going to get anywhere because they know, right? They know you. They know what you meant or what you were saying or whatever. They know your the reason for your actions, usually, right? Certain people just have that ability. And we know certainly Jesus is one of those, magnified 10 million times, that he knows what's in our hearts. So isn't it interesting, again, how we can see these changes? Jesus did not want to have, oh, yeah, I want you to fuss over me. So that's why you're forgiven, because she wiped my feet and she kissed my feet, and, right, which is where that phrase comes from, kissing someone's feet. But yet, we know that's not Jesus. Maybe one of us could do that. Oh, yeah, it was so nice. They made such a fuss over me. Yeah, let's give him a chance. Well, but that's not Jesus. Jesus gives a chance just to give people a chance, to love them and to show mercy on them, not because of what he gains. So we know that doesn't figure in. But it was one way for her to be able to say, I'm sorry, see what's in my heart. Here are some things that maybe will help you. So again, she didn't take the regular way, the way that everybody else was. Here, come into my home, sit down, I'll provide you food. Okay, well, that's hospitable for sure. But she just chose a different way. So sometimes we miss out on the different ways. Okay, so full disclosure, I come from a family of people who love stationary items. I think I've confessed this before, but my mom was really big into stationary items. So pens, notebooks, anything like that. She loved that, and all three of us siblings have kind of inherited that to certain degrees. Well, I was looking for something to do for Mark's birthday, husband Mark, which was in September. And so I looked up Eventbrite. I don't know if you're familiar with Eventbrite, but I looked up to see, hey, are there any conferences or like workshops or fun things that just for something different that Mark and I can do? And I ran across this creatives workshop. So maybe you already know this, but again, I'm not on social media, so I'll go on like YouTube to look things up, but otherwise I don't do any other social media. So maybe this is old news to you, but there's a thing now called creatives, everybody, and you maybe are one of them, right? Of people who love to create and make things, right? And think creatively. And I didn't know that was like a thing. So I thought, ooh, that sounds kind of fun. So there was this conference that we couldn't go, but it was this conference for creatives, and it was all these different like activities and hands-on ways that you can like organize your creativity, and it sounded really cool. Mark wasn't super interested in going, but maybe we'll go next year. Anyway, so as part of this, I ran across a guy named Peter McKimmon. And I don't know if you have ever seen him, but he has a YouTube channel. So I ran across this as I was looking up something else. And he has a whole, I think it was 30 minutes video. He's a photographer and a creative. So I'm going to put that next to my name, Reverend Jennifer Jackson, creative. I just think that's so cool. Okay, anyway, and so he has this whole video on the way that he keeps track of all his creativity. And actually, it's really cool, and I'm so excited, and I even am going to try following it, right? So you have your moleskin that you can keep your tracking and your journaling and ideas you have and all that sort of thing. And then you have one small one that goes with you everywhere. Because I have trouble all the time. I think of song lyrics, or I hear a quote, or I write, oh, this would be a great devotional to write, but then half the time I forget it. So anyway, so he has this whole thing. Now, there's like 20 minutes of this thing is based that he shows all the pens that he uses, okay? And even one of the comments was like, it wasn't my comment, but they said, I can't believe I just watched 20 minutes of a guy oohing and eyeing and telling me all the specific pens and calligraphy and all this stuff that he does. Which is when I knew, yes, I found my niche of people, apparently, that like this as well. So my point in all of this is that we can get this creativity going if we can start thinking of, what are some ideas I have? What are some things that God's putting on my heart that I just kind of went, but maybe these are things of value. And then how do I do that? Obviously, you can type them in your phone. You can, there's a million different ways. But I just thought it was so interesting, again, that people are also turning kind of old school. So he even mentioned that. He said, yeah, I've got all kinds of friends that are like, don't type it in, or don't handwrite it. But we all know that writing does something, right? I mean, studies have shown that. When you write, you remember it more. There's a physical connection to those words that you're physically writing. And if you're not, don't trust me on that, like, just Google it. I mean, you see that there really is research on that. So there is something to that, that part of the creativity. I'm not saying that, throw away your cell phones, although you maybe would get a lot more done, right? If I wasn't sitting there looking at YouTube, but I was actually writing in my journal. So all of these different things to me are so inspiring. And I know there are things out there that touch your passion, right? So one of my passions is to take things and creatively make something out of them. This series just came with 4 weeks, and I had such a great time of adding things in and writing some things and to continue that creative process. What are the things in your life that God is having you have a spark for? I don't know what that is. Is it writing a book? Is it carving things? Or doing woodwork? What is it that God is calling you to do? Now, again, it might not be a physical thing, a craft. And probably maybe not. I mean, there's so many other ways for God to be able to be nudging us a little bit in creative endeavor. Because the thing is, if we are so used to not being creative, then we have a really hard time, don't we? We have a really hard time, and this is happening. What do I do? I don't know. Nothing, I guess, right? We can be so overwhelmed. But if we are used to building up that creativity muscle, and maybe for you it's just like, I'm going to try to draw a stick person right now on my bulletin. I haven't drawn in 30 years. Okay, I'm just going to try that, right? Or, I'm going to try just writing just like a haiku, it's 5 lines, 5 lines. And just kind of just thinking about some things. I'm just going to try to creatively think about a problem I have and maybe 3 creative solutions. Here's the problem. Sometime I'll go and visit. It's usually just certain people that I always, we have this discussion. But there's a few people that I visit when we're done with the day, then I'll say, I'm going to leave, and then this person will say, or that person, well, I think we solved the world's problems, right? You know, because we talk about all these things, and then we're just like, well, what are some things that would work? And then we just kind of like brainstorm, just creatively. Well, if we were in charge of the world, what would happen, you know? And again, it's much harder than it obviously would ever look like, right? But we just kind of have fun with that. And that's strengthening that creativity muscle. So I'm hoping that somewhere in the back of your mind or in the spirit, that the spirit is working in you, that you're maybe thinking of something. Here's some problems I've been having, but I just can't see any solutions. Okay, so maybe you talk to some people about that. Maybe you really pray about that. Maybe you sit down and go, okay, I'm just going to write down 5 solutions to this problem that I'm having. Solution number 1, there's no way. It's out of my hands. I can't do solution 1, but I'm just going to write them down. And there's something about that, of being able to go through that. So again, I don't know where you are in all of this, but I hope that you're kind of just, even if it's just a teeny tiny sliver of your spirit, keeping that open for what God will do in your life and what God will do through your life for other people. Think about all the things that God created from the get-go, right? Giraffes and sea anemones and, I don't know, palm trees, right? Armadillos. What are some of the most creative creatures or plants you can think of, right? God is a creative God. And we can also then follow that. Everything that we are willing to pick up and use is from God. And what God needs, I believe, is more people who will make themselves available for the kind of creative work that God wants us to do. You feed them, right? That's what Jesus says. Here's what I have. I'll take care of this part of it, but you feed them. You figure this out. That's what Jesus was saying, I think, in that miracle, that it's enough. Whatever it is that you're coming up with, it's going to be enough. And he physically shows that with the loaves and fishes. You know, the church has been interested in social change for a really, really long time. And I'm not going to get into a history lesson, but both United Church of Christ and American Baptist Church have long been part of a tradition from the very inception of both of their denominational structure, have been very interested in making change. The church and church people and all of that from both denominations were leaders in the abolition movement here and also in England. And again, the UCC, obviously, from its earlier roots as well, in our church, etc. But they've also been very involved in civil rights movements, and we're going to be talking next week a little bit more about the justice piece of creativity and change. But equal rights for women and for farm workers and protection of refugees. UCC also includes LGBTQ inclusion. So there's a pattern in the way that both of our denominations have historically approached problems, right? We preach and we teach and we protest, and again, we can look back on that. You can grab some of the flyers from our 2 denominations that we represent here, and you'll see that piece of teaching and preaching and positive change. We gather then as people to work on changing hearts, and we march together for justice towards a new frontier. And you know, for many of the problems in the 19th and 20th centuries, this worked. That you can see, you know, these large movements of people working together, even as a whole denomination, and then all the churches underneath and all the people underneath that. And that was an important thing for those denominations to do. And I'm so thankful that we are a part of those denominations here at this church. But I have to say, that's not working anymore. The problems are maybe too hard, not that they weren't problems before, when there was segregation, etc. But that same pattern is not working for us. We're maybe more conscious of the differences among us, or a diversity that brings different points of view and different strategies for change. And there are many things that we simply cannot march in lockstep for. Even something that seems as clear as trying to save the earth. So one of the things that we need to do as change makers is to change. And change how it is that we maybe are doing some things. Now, do we change the gospel? No. Do we change who Jesus is? No. But the way that we approach things, now I can't believe it, but I am kind of looking at some of the ways that some social media actually make some positive change. That some things are able to happen, and it's not a church. The church doesn't have its name on it, a denomination doesn't, but it's a movement. Hey, this happened to this person, right? You see it on Facebook. People have told me about that, I'm assuming, right? That, hey, this person has this issue. Let's all help. Let's all give money to help with this particular thing, to help this family. They lost everything in a fire or whatever it is. And they're not necessarily saying that it's anything religious, right? They're just saying, I want to just help people. And so we can learn from that as well. Change makers know that social change for the common good, doesn't happen like it used to. Now, change happens in small ways, and it takes indirect paths. It happens locally, among small groups of people who care about a problem. Sometimes just one or two people working together. It doesn't face a problem head on. And again, we've seen that, and we try, well, surely everybody would agree with this, that we should do this, because this is what Jesus would want us to do. But then there's opposition on all sides, and again, a lot of it from other Christians. So we know that we are in just a really interesting time right now, and we could feel completely hopeless. Well, I'm not even going to try anything, because everything's just going to argue, everyone's just going to argue. Or we can start making small, substantive change in our lives, in our community, in our church, that again will start to spread, just like waves in a lake when you drop a stone or a rock. I found this quote that change doesn't face religious change can't face a big problem head on. It pokes tiny holes at the problem on the edges, where the resistance is softer, where something small can change without taking on the whole thorny problem. Now again, I'm assuming that there are lots of big things that we would love to just stand here and go, okay, here's what I think should change. And again, even within us, people that look a lot alike, right, probably financially are kind of on the same page, we would have at least 2, right, if not 10 different ways of, oh, no, that's not right. No, it needs to be done this way. But if we can kind of just gently start poking holes into some of the different issues, let's look at this. Let's talk about this together. Let's figure this out. Let me listen to you respectfully, and not just listen to you going, okay, I can say I listened to you, but listen to you respectfully with that in the back of my mind of, I may be wrong, or maybe you're right about this one thing. I really think I'm right about this. But gosh, I never thought of that there might be something valid in what you say. And again, we can see this in so many different ways, but I'm talking specifically religious strife today, because that to me is one of the most troubling issues, is that we, even as Christians, can't get it together to work together and show love to each other, right? And listening with respect. Well, I want to give you one quick example here as I close, about a way that 2 people, actually there were 2 children, can make a difference by caring passionately about something. And again, just to give you a heads up, at the very end here, I'm going to kind of challenge you to come up with one thing that's on your heart. From the very beginning of this series, we talked about that. What is one of the things that you hear about this issue or this problem, or you see something about this, and it just makes your heart just bleed? It just makes you feel terrible, like you just, oh, why is this happening in the world? This can't. And again, maybe it's something really small, but still obviously significant to you, or maybe it's this huge thing. But I'm asking for you to really think about something small today that each one of us, and maybe a couple of us together, can be, okay, I want to do something about this. Because it's so much easier to be passive. Who was I just talking about that? Mark and I can't remember what the topic was. And then he was so frustrated. I guess it was listening to the news. And he was saying, oh, that's what it was. He was saying that he had all these recipes he wanted to try, and he doesn't cook very much. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, I've been listening to the news. I do that. He works out every day. And he goes, but then I just get so tired of it. I get so sad to hear of all the division and all the hatred and people yelling at each other, can't agree on even the simplest of basic of things. And he said, so I just started watching cooking channel things, whatever. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll find the positive in that, But we had this conversation of it's so much easier, isn't it, to just shut somebody down instead of, okay, hang on, I want to listen to you. I want to show respect to you. But it's so much easier to just be negative. Oh, that's wrong. That's stupid. That cancel culture type thing. Instead of taking the time to really care about something. And I think so many of us, unfortunately, have fallen into apathy. And, was Jesus apathetic? Ever? To anybody? Never. To any situation? Never. So I understand that it's tough. And sometimes we need to, just take some time and watch some cooking channels, right? Or maybe buy a new notebook that we can write down ideas in, right? Okay. So I am self-reflective, I get it, right? But at the same time, again, are we doing something? So here's an example. And I found this one, I loved it because it also talks about Jane Goodall, who we know passed away and again was one of my heroes. 2 young girls from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I also love that this was a local thing, so I kept this, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to use it. 2 young girls from Ann Arbor, Rianne and Madison, were working together on a Girl Scout badge. They were supposed to learn something about endangered animals. They got inspired about what they were learning, so they got on their computer and found Jane Goodall's website. They saw photographs from Indonesia and Malaysia, places where orangutans are being slaughtered as rainforests get cleared away to make way for more palm oil plantations. Big problem? Far away, right? How are 2 little girls in Michigan going to do anything to make a difference there? And I got this story from the Change Makers, in case you're wondering where the source is. They thought about palm oil and what it's used for. They started reading the labels on products that their families use regularly, and they noticed that palm oil is one of the ingredients in Girl Scout cookies, which they had been selling since they were in kindergarten. So Rihanna and Madison started something they called orangs. Orangutans really need Girl Scouts. They sent letters. They made hand-lettered posters and gave presentations in their classrooms. They stuck with their project even when people called them little do-gooders and told them to go home and concentrate on their schoolwork. And people heard them. In 2011, the Girl Scouts of the United States adopted a sustainable palm oil policy. The problem isn't solved, but those girls have made a difference. So I love that. I love that. It's the kind of creativity, again, that when we hear something and it just touches us, that God can help us find really interesting, creative ways of doing things. And I've run across some really wonderful ones I'm going to share next week as well. How much bread do you have, Jesus says to us. Take a look. And we can, again, just look at, just a couple. Not much to hear. I don't have much in my spirit right now. I don't have many good ideas. I'm not that smart. But if we can open ourselves up to put ourselves kind of in God's way, if you will. Here, God, I'm a vessel. Use me. That's one of the reasons why I love that song this morning, and I hope maybe you'll listen to that this week. I will make room for you to do whatever you want to. We who have been created in the image of a creative God, the God who can feed 5,000 people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, we have the capability to do great things. And so I just want you to think about that this week. Maybe again, write down something of how you view creativity. And if it's something that you feel like you've never really done before, then maybe that's the prayer we start with. We talked about that before, I think, a little bit, of how is it that we can be a change maker? Well, I have no idea, God. All right, well, let's start with compassion. Let's start of where is it that your heart just aches, and we'll go from there.